On Wednesday, CNN counterterrorism analyst Philip Mudd burst into tears and pushed gun control while speaking about the tragic school shooting in at Real Savidra. Breaking Fox News is reporting that suspected gunman Nicholas D. Jesus Cruz was a member of resistance groups on Facebook. At Thomas Witter, 1. So aside from the shooter's volition, what is the major dysfunction that leads to school shootings? List 4. At Thracio Fraud, why don't we protect our school children? W guns, we protect our banks, politicians, borders. W guns, but not our precious kids. We need trained armed security guards inside every school, along W2 cops in parking lot. Parkland Nicholas Cruz. At Real Savidra. Breaking suspected gunman Nicholas Cruz was a member of resistance groups on Facebook, including Syrian resistance groups and fighter groups out of Iraq.
His social media footprint, and we have found that on his Facebook page he left the picture part blank. And as far as that, there wasn't a lot of information we can glean from the Facebook page. But if you look at things like his Instagram page, you can see that he is fascinated by guns. Again, we do not know the type of weapon. We don't know the power of the weapon, but we do know that this suspect, if in fact it is him, is fascinated by guns, is fascinated by gun groups. He is also following resistance groups like Syrian resistance groups and fighter groups out of Iraq. And we should also note that a couple of days ago, as far as a week ago, that he was involved in a YouTube chat room conversation about bombs or building bombs. And because of that, we could hear earlier while this was going on the scanner traffic police were saying, look, we just found this information. This kid was on a building bomb site. We need to check the school for bombs, maybe 1 or 2 bombs. So you throw that into the mix, and you have SWAT teams and police now trying to scour this school, going room to room and space to space, trying to clear it. And then you throw in this alternate factor of the possibility that there might have also been explosives. Now, we
At Station Bird. RT, if you're a sick ampersand tired of hearing the same generic talk from the terrorist organization ampersand the spineless gob. Now is not the time to talk and control. Our thoughts and prayers are with the families. What happened in Parkland, Florida needs action. Now.
Happened, Alex? So we heard our fire alarm for the second time that day, which was weird, and we left the classroom, which he locked the door so we could leave. And when people were halfway down the stairwell, it just stopped. The alarm stopped, and we heard gunshots coming from the first floor, the second floor, and people were running upstairs even from the second floor. And we all got upstairs and into our classrooms. And when he tried to unlock the door, me and a couple other people ran in, and as he was closing the door, he was actually shot and killed right there. And the door was left open the whole time, so as he walked by, the door was open. He could have walked in at any time, and we just had to be as quiet as possible.
Where did you run when that happened, Alex? You had to have been so terrified.
Yeah, I was waiting for my teacher to open the door, and after that I just bolted into our same classroom, and we all hid in the corner, and that was it. That's all I saw until
And you
I
ran with
looked.
some friends, and your teacher stayed there, obviously, on the ground.
Yeah.
So he ran back to open the classroom for you guys,
Mhm.
so you could be safe, apparently.
Mhm. So when we ran in, yeah, he was about to close the door
After they'd gotten back in, he was trying to lock the door to keep the students safe, and before he had a chance to close and lock the door, that's when he got shot.
Mom, what are your thoughts?
At Sam Whiteout.
That
I'm just
Roses are
terrified.
red,
We just
violets
moved here
are
from
blue.
Canada a few
For
months
old
ago,
time
and
mistake, here
the
is
thought that
sashimi
this
for
would
you.
be where we would
Happy
be
Valentine's
with a
Day from
school
your
shooting
friendly
is
neighborhood
a
noobs
nightmare.
vibe noob Equator.
Never imagined.
what to the teacher that's possibly saved your daughter's
I
life?
feel sick about the teacher. Every time I think about it, I feel sick about it. I can't even imagine that he's not here anymore. I feel terrible. And I believe they had just earlier after the break, done some drills on this exact kind of situation, which is, I think, why the teachers and students knew what to do in this instance.
Unbelievable. Alex, how were there chaos? Were people yelling inside of that school, in that freshman building?
Yeah, I remember hearing this. Somebody down the hall was screaming, like, "Help me, come save me," or I didn't hear really crying, but he was just yelling the whole time, like, for someone to come save him. But, like, we weren't going to move because we didn't know who it was, if it was someone faking it.
Did you hear so many gunshots? Was it?
Yes. I did hear a lot coming from the floor below me before I ran back up to my classroom, and then I did hear some in the hallway, and then it stopped, but we didn't move because we knew that he was probably still in there, because if the cops were going to come.
Students should never have to see. Thank you so much for speaking with us. I'm so sorry, Alex, that you had to go through this, but the deafening sound of gunshots going through the hallway here at Marjorie.
At CNN, more than 100 White House officials, including Ivanka Trump, Jared Kushner and Rob Porter, did not have full security clearance as of November. At Melody Ball, at NBC, at CBS MIM, at NCNU, at WSV, at CBS NEWS 0181.4. My little brother just sent me this video of a SWAT team evacuating his classroom at Stoneman Douglas. So scary, but glad he is safe. At NBC6, at CBS MIMI, at NCNews, at WSV and at CBS NEWS. At Thomas 1774 Payne. Obama portrait artist outsources works to Chinese painters. The artist who painted former President Barack Obama's recently unveiled portrait reportedly has a habit of outsourcing some of his work to Chinese painters. One report by the Los Angeles Times Pub. At Rumble Biggs. Today's incident has nothing to do with gun control and has everything to do with the ignored warning signs that pointed to that individual possibly flipping out in the future. At the Captain. Love each other. You may never know when it may be the last day you meet someone. At Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School. Attorney AT. Ivy heard mentally ill, our Antifa, our Democrat, our Republican, our drugs, our white supremacist so far. Stop the bullshit. Regardless of any of that, he is first and foremost a terrorist. He is evil and should be treated as such. It is by far the most the gun group has ever spent. At Daphne Linzer, at Carol L, at Mikamal, at Quilkern 33. Breaking more than 130 political appointees working in White House didn't have permanent security clearances as of November 2017, including Ivanka Trump, Jared Kushner and Don McGahn, according to internal documents obtained by NBC News at Carol L at Mikamal at Quilkern. At Odeb, at Mach 4M. Mississippi Special Election February 20th, 2018 Vote Morris Mach MSHD 60 MS House District 60 Follow at Mach 4 MSFB MS Flipped Blue Wednesday Wisdom Blue Wave 2018 MSD MS Valentine's Day. At latest in news. Horrifying video from inside classroom during Florida school shooting warning graphic content.
Oh my God! Oh my God! Holy. Oh my God! Oh my God!
All right, so you're looking at what is obviously a graphic scene as we hear gunfire go off inside this school and students either sitting or lying down trying to protect themselves.
At Still Grey. Remember, wearing a Black Panther mask is cultural appropriation and you're not allowed to do it. At a Goodman Author, to all those who hate Israel, remember that female soldiers walk the streets with assault rifles. People are armed even in restaurants. They need to be at all times, many of them, because of Hamas, etc. Remember them. Progressives know active shooters in Israel. Wonder why. At Jordan Terson, at Human Progress. But what about the overpopulation problem?
So many different things that are going to happen right now. The children are going to miss school for the next week, petrified to go back into a schoolroom. What surprises me is he was a student, not a student anymore. How did he get into a school where there's a police officer on duty? Not to blame anybody, David, but just to look at maybe the process. I think also there's some report that having pulled the fire alarm, the children did what they were trained to do, but they ran right into the shooting gallery for this for the subject and for the individual doing the shooting, and that's tragic. And maybe something has to be done with the protocol. It's such a horrible set of circumstances. 17 people dead, more injured. We don't know the full extent of everybody's injuries. David, it's just one tragic event after another, and now law enforcement has to unravel this big ball of yarn and find out, how did he get the gun? Did he have any assistance? What did he do? How did he get out of the school afterwards? I suspect they probably know some of that already, but it's just a tragedy.
At Randy Breen. Time to be political. It is political. One party wants open carry across the country and one does not. One party wants background checks and one does not. One party wants assault weapons to be illegal and one does not. One party wants guns on campuses and one does not.
Horror in the classroom. Terrifying gunshots near the end of the school day. Students posting videos on social media as a shooter opened fire at Stoneman Douglas High in Florida, north of Fort Lauderdale.
I have the gunshot victim.
This is a catastrophic, an unbelievably catastrophic day in Broward County history. It's devastating. I'm sick to my stomach.
Teens streaming out of the building, single file, hands in the air. Images reminiscent of Columbine and so many other recent shootings.
I'm just relieved that he's okay. Yes. Yes.
Officials calling it a mass casualty incident.
I'm coming out to the east side with the casualty and ambulance standing by, critical casualty.
Some of the victims treated on the sidewalk outside of the school.
One of my friends who got out one of the windows, when he was running over here to go to his mom, he looked all shaken and stuff, and he said he did see 2 dead bodies.
With the shooter described as a former
Donald Trump, I am
student,
totally opposed to domestic violence. News
scared students sheltering in place, texting their loved ones.
She was sending us texts like saying, I love you, I'm sorry, and all that because she didn't think she was going to make it.
Boris Johnson Brexit holds more open. Fair News DW 14.2018.
Many racing to the school.
And he told me, you know, we're still here. We hear gunshots outside of the classroom.
Nearly 2 hours after the terror began, a suspect taken into custody and transported to a nearby hospital.
Oh, I'm happy because I have my son with me.
You're worried.
I just thank you, Jesus. Yes, I was very worried.
It's the worst feeling for a parent to go through.
As police sweep the campus for other possible threats, distraught families try to come to terms with another American tragedy.
We have just learned that
to become South Africa's new leader, France 24.
Shooting, both teachers and students. And this is still a very active scene out here. Police are still sweeping the school, and parents are still showing up here at this school.
Zero gravity party plane takes off in Frankfurt, Germany. News DW 72.2018.
For checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that
Boeing
button
Dong party
down
pressure.
here.
South African President Jacob Zuma resigns. France 24.
Watch the latest interviews, show highlights, and digital exclusives. Thanks for watching.
We're beginning to see the beginning of what I call a sea change in ETF flows, and it's really driven by
Would
rising
delivery
rates
drones be all that efficient? Depends where you live, Wired.
This is going to shift around $200 billion in investor money. It's really going to happen in fixed income. So let's look at the 1-week flows in fixed income ETFs. And what you see is pretty striking. Look at the top. These are some very boring, ultra short-term dated ETFs. Basically, you go out here if you want to hide out from rates or a crisis. Then you look, you got the floating rate bond ETF, clearly concerned about rates. But let's look at VTIP. You never see that one on this list. This is the inflation-protected ETFs. If we look at just that category, these are treasury bonds that are indexed to inflation. People use them to hedge against inflation. Look at their year-to-date flows. They've been
German
taking
arrested
money
for
in
pushing
all year,
policeman
really,
into
over the
streetcar.
past
News
month.
DW
But look at the number of
13.2018.
them that have taken in money. That's rare. It's not just all going to that big liquid one. This tells me it's a retail and institutional trade
Donald
right
Trump,
now.
I am totally opposed to domestic violence. News DW 14.2018.
TIP in particular. That's the big one here. Let's go back 10 years just so you get an idea of how this thing behaves. It doesn't move like TLT or a treasury ETF. Here's how it's moved since 2008.
Police raids in Milton Keynes rescue modern slavery victims. News DW 14.2018.
But if you look lately, there's been about 12 billion piling into here. So this is not the first time investors have had some concern with this, but Scarlett, watch this ticker
Everything you need to know about the 2018 Berlinale film DW14 2.2018.
Going on for about 8 years.
Yeah, well, there's a long unwind to come then. Let's bring in Nate Geraci, president of the ETF store and the first investment advisor to offer only exchange-traded funds. Also joining us is Bloomberg News ETF reporter Carolina Wilson, who's been following the inflation story closely this week. And Carolina, let me begin with you. You wrote a story on this. What kind of shifts are you seeing, and what does it suggest for what we might see in the coming weeks?
Sure. So highlighting what Eric mentioned, last week we really saw ETF buyers almost pouring into some fixed income funds holding treasury bonds, specifically tipped. I mean, that saw close to $430 million in inflows last week alone. And why are they looking for that hedge? Why are they looking to hedge that inflation risk? I mean, we know that inflation has been stubbornly low for a long time, but we also
China
know
wants
that
to make a mark in space, but it will need a little help wired.
Indicating that inflation might be back. So those sort of things really push buyers to consider funds that are going to help give them a shield or almost help them protect themselves against inflation.
So Nate, how convinced are you of this change in narrative? And how do you advise investors to prepare for it, whether or not
Must-read coverage on Syria from 2017 Syria deeply.
Point. Investors have been used to bonds performing
The fate of minorities in post-ISIS Syria and Iraq Syria deeply.
We've been in a 35-year bull market in bonds, and now we are starting to see interest rates tick up. We had a strong CPI print today. And so I think it's important to look at potential hedges in a bond portfolio.
And how do you
Amazon
do that?
surpasses
You're an ETF
Microsoft
user.
in
We like to
market
get the
value for the
products out
first
here.
time.
What do you use to prepare for this? Do you ladder? Do you use one of these ultra short-term ones? Interest rate hedged? What do you do?
Yeah, you know, the first thing I would say is you don't want your entire bond portfolio as a hedge. So, but you do want to have some diversifications there. So there are several ETFs that we use. The iShares floating rate bond ETF, ticker FLOT. We like that. It's all investment grade. Maturity's less than 5 years. Interest rates, as they go up, your interest payments adjust upward as well. Many are tied to the 3-month LIBOR. So we like that. There's basically zero duration risk within that fund. Another thing we like to do is ladder Guggenheim bullet shares, the corporate bond variety. What's nice about those is you can select the 2021s or the 2022s, ladder those in a portfolio. As rates go up, when those come due, then you can reinvest into later dated bond ETFs.
Okay, so those are the strategies to prepare for rising rates. Volatility is also rising, Carolina, and you've been writing about ways that people are preparing or protecting against that increase in price swings. One way to do it, perhaps, is looking at gold miners.
We've seen a lot of strong inflows into gold miners ETFs, actually, because sure, when volatility spikes up, kind of that classic safe haven reputation of gold comes into play. We're also seeing flows into gold miner ETFs, though, because this week some of those producers they're reporting earnings. So it could be, you know, people having a bullish view on that.
Now, volatility. Nate, how do you deal with that? I'm guessing you don't use VXX in your client portfolios. Good for you. So how do you do it?
SVXY, maybe.
Yeah, so look, on the equity side of the portfolio, we really focus on investor behavior. And we're only going to have our clients positioned in a manner to which they can withstand the equity risk that they have exposure to. And so we don't use specific hedges on the equity side of the portfolio to try to manage the volatility. Really, it's our job to nail down that risk tolerance and have the right balance between stocks, bonds, and potentially some other assets in a portfolio.
Yeah, it's notable, though, that SVXY continued to see money pouring in, even as people were saying that the demise of XIV meant that people were going to get away from these kinds of products. What do you make of that?
Trump fires first salvo on drug prices. Alex Jones info hours there is a war on for your mind.
Products. Let me say this. They do exactly what they say they're going to do. And those products are effective. primarily for institutional investors. These are not ETFs that retail investors should be touching with a 10-foot pole, in my mind. So,
Restructure
I
and
always come
state
back, there's a
possible
lot of
power
products
sharing
out there
agreements
like
for
this where
Syria
you have
deeply.
institutional caliber strategies. I think ETFs are wonderful in the fact that they have democratized
Syrian conflict isn't over.
and brought
Don't
a
you
lot of these
forget the Syrians
strategies
double Syria
to
deeply.
the public, but not all of them should be used by the public, and that's the key.
Carolina, we looked at this last week. I think there was about $500 billion in ETF trading over like 10 days. You study this stuff all the time. Was there anything outside of XIV and that whole drama that you saw that was a concern in the trading?
It's a great point.
Kuwait condemns Philistine president as cult evacuate workers.
Is this, indicative of a larger ETF-led
Video
meltdown?
Antifa picks they fight.
I mean,
Loses.
Spy
Guys,
last
Alex Jones
Tuesday, I
info
think it
hours
traded
there, so run for your
$61
mind.
billion. Compare that with Amazon, the day's most traded single U.S. listed stock, trading $10 billion. I don't think it's really indicative of huge investor concern here.
And Nate, look, I know on your podcast you talk about active and passive and mutual funds. These bear markets,
duties on
we
Chinese
have data
pipe
showing
fittings.
that they actually improve the passive market share gain. Is there ever a place where you'd be concerned about ETFs if they get to, say, I don't know, 10 trillion, 20 trillion?
Not really. If you look last week to what she was just saying, ETFs performed extremely well. They've continued to grow in assets.
Diver. When I realized what this was. This is an interesting perspective. Syria experts at the World Economic Forum's annual meeting in Davos weighing on what must be done to improve a humanitarian situation and alleviate the impact of war in Syria. Allies pledged $30 billion to rebuild Iraq, far short of $88 billion goal for 24. This is a good story, check it out. International News 24/7. Latest update 2018-02-14. The biggest pledge at the gathering in Kuwait came from Turkey, which announced $5 billion in credit to Iraq, while Kuwait's ruling emir said his oil-rich nation will give $1 billion in loans and $1 billion in direct investments. Saudi Arabia pledged $1.5 billion while the Kuwait-based Arab Fund says Iraq will receive $1.5 billion in infrastructure aid in coming years. Qatar, which is embroiled in a diplomatic crisis with a quartet of Arab nations led by Riyadh, pledged $1 billion. The United Arab Emirates pledged $500 million, as did the Islamic Development Bank. Germany pledged €500 million, $617 million, and the European Union €400 million, $494 million. Wild, this is just wild. Attorney and Tannenbaum peacemaker Hind Cabot writes about the deteriorating humanitarian situation for women in and around Idlib, where she co-founded the Georgianas and Dere Women's Peace Center with the EU last year. German hash arrested for pushing policeman into streetcar bar. News bar DW bar 13.2.2018. Insanity, it's utter insanity out there. The traditional carnival celebrations in Cologne took a tragic turn when a policeman was mowed down by a tram. Police suspect it was a case of murder, although the judge is not convinced. Police in Cologne on Monday said they had arrested a 44-year-old man suspected of pushing an off-duty police officer to his death over the carnival weekend. The suspect, a German national, has refused to confirm whether he deliberately pushed the police officer between two cars, a reason the public prosecutor pressed for murder charges against him. The judge did not see any evidence to support the police claims and charged the suspect with manslaughter. The police are reviewing footage from nearby security cameras for clues. US slaps anti-dumping duties on Chinese pipe fittings. Just take a minute and look at this. China is hurting U.S. manufacturers of cast iron soil pipe fittings by dumping its products on the American market, the Commerce Department said on Wednesday in announcing it will collect cash deposits from importers of the fittings. The department said it preliminarily found that Chinese exporters have sold the fittings in the United States at 68.37% to 109.95% less than fair value, and that in 2016 imports of the fittings from China were valued at an estimated $8.6 million. It will issue a final determination on June 27. The highest dumping rate came from Cibo International Limited, according to the Commerce Department, which has put a duty on the company's fittings of 109.79%. President Donald Trump's administration has made protecting U.S. manufacturers a priority, and since Trump took office has initiated 94 investigations into unfair subsidies and dumping, where company exports products at artificially low prices. At Red Raccoon, Marco Rubio has received $3,303,355 from UNRWA. At Real Saavedra, 1,780 babies were aborted today, zero coverage in the media. At Mark Warner, fact Russia attacked our democracy in 2016, and they will be back in 2018. That is not just my opinion. It is the unanimous conclusion of our nation as top intel officials.
Agree with Director Pompeo that we haven't seen a significant decrease in the Russian activity, and we have every expectation, I think Director Coates, you've already alluded to this, that they'll try to continue to intervene in our elections in 2018 and 2020. I'll start with you, Director Cardell. Simple yes or no will do.
Well, so no change in my view of the 2017 assessment. I support that, and I agree with Director Pompeo's assessment about the likelihood of the 2018 occurrence as well.
I participated in that 2017 work. I stood by it then. I stand by it now, and I agree with Director Pompeo. This is not going to change or stop.
General Ashley.
Yes, it is not going to change, nor is it going to stop.
Throughout the entire community, we have not seen any evidence of any significant change from last year.
I agree with Director Pompeo.
You've been waiting for that answer for
I have. I've had that one in the pocket for a while. Yes, sir.
As do I.
At Brandon Grony. The problem isn't guns or Donald Trump. The problem is a lack of guidance, parenting, law enforcement and basic teachings of morals for the Florida shooter. People knew he was psychotic. People knew he had guns. People knew he was violent. People kill, not guns. Sickening. At Gatongab. Daily reminder there is no negotiating with these people or comprising. They want you dead. At Trump Babe 69. With a civil war raging, Lincoln faced intense pressure to fire U.S. Grant due to his drinking. Lincoln replied, I can't spare the man, he fights. So when you tell me Trump is vulgar, crude, and unprofessional, my response is I can't spare the man, he fights. In the wake of a horrific school shooting on Wednesday at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in South Florida, various news outlets. At Matty Galici is. Okay guys. I am starting to think that some of the passion Republicans mustered a couple of years back about scrupulous by-the-book handling of classified information wasn't entirely sincere. At Amy Siskind. This is unacceptable. There were more than 100 staffers in the executive office of the president who were operating on interim clearances more than a year after Trump was elected. Nearly a year into President Donald Trump's administration, senior-level staffers including Ivanka Trump, Jared Kushner and Rob Porter remained on interim clearances even as other senior. At Waleed 97721. Must-watch video of Syria's Representative Bashar al-Jafari today giving a speech in the Security Council describing how the United States, the conference violated the principles and provisions of the UN Charter in their war on Syrians.
من الإرهابيين المرتزقة من أكثر من 100 دولة عضو في هذه المنظمة إلى داخل سوريا. ومن خلال إنشاء معسكرات تدريب للإرهابيين في دول الجوار ومن خلال محاولة تقديم هؤلاء الإرهابيين على أنهم معارضة سورية معتدلة. اليوم الإرهابي المرتزق الذي يأتينا من 100 دولة عضو اسمه معارضة سورية معتدلة. طبعا تم تعديل الصفة الوراثية لهؤلاء بحيث يصبحون سوريين. زميلي يقول لي أن السيدة المترجمة قالت أن دمشق قصفت ب20 قذيفة هاون فقط. لا، أعيد، تم قصف مدينة دمشق خلال 20 يوما الأخيرة ب1000 قذيفة وصاروخ. لن أذيع سرا أيها الرئيس حين أقول بأن هذا الدعم للإرهابيين قد كلف هذه الدول 137 مليار دولار على حد قول رئيس وزراء قطر السابق. كما لن أذيع سرا عندما أقول بأن سفير الولايات المتحدة الأمريكية السابق في دمشق قد أعلن بأن بلاده صرفت 12 مليار دولار خلال 4 سنوات منذ عام 2014 وحتى عام 2017 بهدف تغيير الحكم في سوريا. الحكم في سوريا مو عاجب للشباب في واشنطن، بدهم يغيروه. بيغيروه ببغداد، بيغيروه بليبيا، بيغيروه بسوريا، بيغيروه بفنزويلا، بإيران. ما في قانون. أما وثائق ويكيليكس فقد فضحت سياسات الإدارات الأمريكية المتعاقبة المعادية لبلادي منذ الغزو الأمريكي البريطاني للعراق. لقد تلاعبت هذه الدول بمبادئ الميثاق وانتهكت أحكامه عندما قدمت للمجموعات الإرهابية المسلحة وسهلت امتلاكها للمواد الكيميائية السامة لاستخدامها ضد المدنيين الأبرياء، ومن ثم التلاعب بمكان الحوادث وفبركة المعلومات وتقديم شهادات زور مضللة لآلية تحقيق مشكوك بمصداقيتها وحيادها ليتم اتهام الحكومة السورية واتخاذه ذريعة لشن العدوان عليها. هذا مجلد كبير سيد الرئيس ب136 رسالة تم إرسالها من الحكومة السورية إليكم. 136 رسالة حول معلومات مهمة جدا تتعلق باستخدام
At 4chan's bust. How to shit post after a shooting. At Carl Higby. Get him out of here. At Activist 360. Our founding fathers would be outraged that we've allowed America to be awash in our 15s. Do any of you Republican ignoramuses understand that when we adopted the Second Amendment in 1791, our most destructive gun was a musket? Founding fathers, from the grave gun control. At Bongino. I instantly block the imbeciles at Media Matters. It saves me from having to lose points dealing with these colossal losers. At Waleed 97721, at Oda Kateb. Watch how Iranian American fashion blogger at Oda Katebi owns to us newscasters when she is asked about Iran and nuclear weapons. Their reaction was, "You don't sound like an American. Respect for her courage."
I think we have some of those pictures here. Do you think you would like to see Iran go back to that before women were wearing hijabs, or would you like to be meeting somewhere in the middle?
Yeah, I think these photos being seen out of context is always really decontextualizing what actually was taking place in the country. So the people who dressed in the sort of Western dress that we're seeing now are actually a very minority group of people. They were upper class people. So if you wore a hijab, there's actually a period of mandatory unveiling where someone could actually pull the hijab off of you. So it was an incredibly violent time and very intolerant. But we kind of see these images of it as nostalgia of like, oh, we want to go back to this time. But we have to understand that this isn't actually how the majority of Iranians lived. So actually images of like mini skirts of Afghanistani women were shown to Trump earlier this month as an excuse for why the U.S. should keep troops on the ground, because, oh, we should like go back to the time where Muslim women or Afghan women were wearing miniskirts. But we don't understand that if we look at education levels, you know, like education of women in Iran right now greatly exceeds what it was back during this time where women were wearing miniskirts. So if we want to talk about women's rights, let's talk about more like their social economic status rather than just what they're wearing.
Let's talk about nuclear weapons.
Okay.
Our viewers, some of our viewers may say, we cannot trust Iran.
Mm-hmm.
Come on, baby. Oh, man. Oh, okay, 1440. Get him then. 1440. And yeah, another one. Oh, boy. Oh, I can't wait for this one. That's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about, Sean. Oh, man, if they don't get it, if he doesn't get better than 9525, oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. Oh, I can't even wait for the score. I can't wait for the score. He did it. Your boy did it. Come on, give me the score. Stop talking. Give me the score. Oh, 97! That's what I'm talking about! Yeah.
Akryuzmtaker. When you hear the phrase "let me finish" for the 800th time. At Real Savidra, at CNNTH, this teacher belongs to groups like the Trump Resistance Movement on Facebook. At Fox News, at Mark Rubio on reaction to Florida school shooting. People want to know how this happened, who this person is, what motivated them. I think it is important to know all of that before you jump to conclusions that there is some law that we could have passed that could have prevented it.
Shouldn't we at least know the facts? And so I think that you can always have that debate, but if you're going to have the debate about this particular incident, you should know the facts of that incident before you run out and prescribe some law that you claim could have prevented it. I've seen a lot of that on television, and maybe there is a law that could have prevented this instance, but we don't know that, and neither do they.
At Social Power on 1. I've seen him wear a Trump hat. Shooter described as extremist, outcast, hater. Students shared some memories of the shooter, some of which confirm images online. California Attorney General Xavier Becerra is threatening to sue if the Trump administration includes a question regarding citizenship on the 2020 census. The San Diego Union Tribune reports that at Lawrence, when I was in school we had fire drills. Now they have active shooter drills. Progress.
and they just released a report. And if you look at that, about the military budgets, you will find that the budget of Russia 1 year is $46 billion. The budget of the UK is $52 billion. So the British are spending more than we're doing, and the budget of the United States military budget for 1 year is $700 billion. It means that the whole NATO spends almost $1 trillion against $46 billion. So roughly 20 times more. So make your own conclusions.
At Cernovich, over 130 Trump officials can't get security clearances.
Today's tragedy, don't really think that'd be appropriate. But I do want to sort of talk about an issue that has been a very, very important issue, as you're now seeing in the media. So let's go ahead and look at the issue of the day. Everybody's saying 130 Trump officials can't get security clearances. So here's a guy, February 28, 2017.
MikeSermich, Guerrilla Mindset. I was in D.C., and because my source network is the best, better than anyone in media, I got more stories in a few days than you're going to find in the New York Times in a year. Didn't know anything. The big development right now, that the media, they only report a little bit, but they don't connect the dots. Remember before they scalped General Flynn, they pulled the security clearance of a Marine officer who already had TSS clearance.
Okay, so here's me. This is me, Mike Cernovich, talking about security clearances. February 28th, 2017. So I've been telling you guys about the security clearances issue for a year. And now suddenly the media is going like, oh, wow, there's this big story out there. Security clearances. Oh, man. Here, well, today, breaking news. This is 2018, February 14, 2018. Breaking. More than 130 political appointees working in the White House didn't have permanent clearances. Great.
At Krasenstein, Florida Governor Scott, how did this happen in Parkland? An R-15 assault rifle was legal in your state. That is how this happened. Gun control, no. At Unstable Origins. A little red paint and problem solved. Will someone find this thing and knock this out? At Forever Never Trump. Conservatives, how dare you politicize gun massacres? Also conservative, we can't allow Muslims into the country because 9/11. At Murdoch's 2N, at Arnold Johnson, what is there to understand about furries? It is not that deep. After that first time masturbating to Lola Bunny from Space Jam, you ignored the shame you felt afterwards, stole your mom's sewing machine and started to be tough as an anthropomorphic cartoon character.
This is a breaking news alert.
More breaking news now. The FBI director, Christopher Wray, scared speechless the second that Tom Cotton asked him the question that he dreads. We'll show you the clip here in a moment, but first, Jim Hoft at the Gateway Pundit gives us the background that last week Fox News reported that Senator Mark Warner, the top senator on the Senate Intelligence Committee, well, he was caught communicating with a lobbyist for Putin-linked Russian oligarch Oleg Deripaska. Senator Warner reached out to the lobbyist, linked him, because he wanted to speak with Fusion GPS dossier author Christopher Steele. Isn't that interesting? You got to go through the Russians to get to the author of the dossier. Now, what also is interesting is Warner communicated with a phone app that deletes all messages. He said he didn't want a paper trail communicating, leading back to him. Now they say here, for the record, Oleg Deripaska threw a birthday bash for John McCain back in 2008 in the Adriatic Sea. Ain't that something? Well, on Tuesday, Senator Tom Cotton, he asked the FBI Director Christopher Wray about Oleg Deripaska. Take a look.
Donald Trump, I am totally opposed to domestic violence. News DW 14.2018.
I've heard the name. Is it fair to call him a
police raids in Milton Keynes rescue modern slavery victims. News DW 14.2018.
Well, I'll leave that characterization to others, and certainly not in this setting.
France Emmanuel Macron closes LEC press room. News DW
14.2018. Letter to a London-based lawyer who is who represents Mr. Deripaska, and asked if Christopher Steele was employed either directly or indirectly by Oleg Deripaska at the time he was writing the so-called Steele dossier. Do you know if Christopher Steele
Germany
worked for
considering
Oleg
free
Deripaska?
public transportation to take on air pollution. News
something I
DW
can answer.
13.2018.
Could we discuss it in the classified setting?
There might be more we could say there.
Thank you. And maybe we'll hear back from the lawyer in London as well to give us a straight answer. Jim Comey testified before
News
this
and current
committee
affairs from
in an
Germany
open
and
setting
around the
last
world.
summer,
DW.
and he referred to the Steele dossier as salacious and unverified. Does that remain the FBI's position?
Several hurt an incident near us. National Security Agency.
I
France
think maybe there's
24.
more we can talk about this afternoon on that.
Okay, thank you.
Oh yeah, there is definitely more that can be talked about in a classified setting. Christopher Wray, he's trying his
Ex-President Juncker
best
defense system
to
against
cover
French calls for
the
reform. News
FBI
DW 14.2018.
However, it just makes everything worse. Wow, unbelievable. Comment below with your thoughts. We'll see you at the next report for the next news network.
Multiple fatalities after gunman opens fire at Florida High
Quick
School.
question
France
for you.
24.
Are you watching the markets? Bitcoin? Yeah, I know. It looks pretty scary. But what if I told you there was a way to ride this roller coaster without fear? What if I told you there was a way to actually make money in the crypto market despite these conditions with the help of an expert? Well, TradeGeniusAcademy.com has new specials that they're offering until the 28th of this month.
Everyone hates Silicon
TradeGeniusAcademy.com has
Valley,
now
except
launched
its
new
imitators.
software.
Wired.
It's called the Day Trading Money Machine Deluxe Edition.
From India to buy
which
in
is
South
a
Africa, the
buy-sell
rise and fall of
indicator
Augustus France
that can
24.
be used on cryptocurrencies and ETF stocks. Now, if you don't know, indicators are useful tools that beginners and advanced traders use
Who was going to
give
buy
them
the International
confidence
Space
whether
Station.
to
Wired.
take a buy or sell signal on a stock. Trade Genius highly recommends that traders use an indicator tool as a good reference. Now, the best part is that Bob Kudla, he will and his team will teach you.
It is not just lizards and other creatures tag as spies.
TradeGeniusAcademy.com. So take a look at some of these specials. Go to the website, TradeGeniusAcademy.com, and learn how you can cash in on the digital money revolution.
Fractalist
Thank you for watching that report. If you want more,
French
subscribe to the
retailers
channel
France
by
24.
clicking on the Next News Network logo right here. And you can watch our latest
Deeply
news
talks the
reports
future
by
of Syria's
clicking
female
here.
Syria deeply.
Or for the latest breaking news, click
How
right
de-escalation zones in
Also,
Syria
if you
became a
want
war
to watch the
management
most viral
strategy.
news on
Syria
the channel,
deeply.
the news reports that Hillary and Obama hate, then click right here.
Thank you, Chairman Thornberry, Ranking Member Smith, and distinguished members. It's an honor for me to appear again before this committee for what is likely my last posture hearing to you all. I do regret that I'm not here with my usual testimony battle buddy, General Vince Brooks from Korea, but I think you'll all agree that he's where he's needed right now on the Korean Peninsula. There are many things to talk about since my last testimony 10 months ago, but I want to start by thanking the Congress for your actions last week. I'm grateful for the bipartisan
Syria
effort
2018, the major issues for the year ahead. Syria
FY
deeply.
18 and 19, and I'm optimistic that Congress will resource the FY 18 NDAA in the coming weeks. I and many others have regularly highlighted the negative effects that sequestration and the Budget Control Act have leveled against the military, so I would further ask the Congress to make these bipartisan measures permanent and end sequestration for good. One of the principal problems that we face in the region is overcoming the perception that the United States is a declining power. A fully resourced defense budget leading into long-term budget stability will send a strong signal to our allies, partners, and all potential adversaries that the U.S. is fully committed to preserving a free and open order in the Indo-Pacific. As a PACOM commander, I have the
College
tremendous
students
honor
love open borders.
of
Alex
leading
Jones info hours there is a run for your mind.
375,000 soldiers, sailors, Marines, airmen, Coast Guardsmen, and Department of Defense civilians standing watch for
SPD
the
Mayor
largest
Simone
and
Lang
most
challenges
diverse
Henry Knowles for
geographic
party
command.
leadership. News DW
These men and women, as
13.2018.
well as their families, fill me with pride in their hard work and devotion to duty. I'm humbled to serve alongside them. The U.S. has an enduring national interest in the Indo-Pacific.
To file for bankruptcy.
As I
Alex Jones
stated
info
last
hours there
year,
is a run for
I
your
believe
mind.
America's security and economic prosperity are indelibly linked to this critical region, which remains at a precarious crossroads where tangible opportunity meets significant challenge. Here we face a security environment more complex
Scientists
and
know
volatile
how you will
than
respond
we have
to nuclear war, and they
experienced
have
in
a plan
recent
wired.
memory. Rogue regimes like the Democratic People's Republic of
New
Korea
York prosecutor sues
persist
Harvey
in
Weinstein as
taking
studio ahead of
outlaw
reported
actions
Fail News
that
DW
threaten regional and
12.2018.
even global stability. This past year has seen rapid and comprehensive improvement in the DPRK's ballistic missile and nuclear capabilities, despite broad international condemnation and the imposition of additional United Nations Security Council
Party
resolutions.
pressure. South
This
African
includes the
President Jacob
detonation
Zuma resigns
of
France
its largest
24.
nuclear device, first ever launches of 2 different intercontinental
The market has
ballistic
Index
missiles
just gave a
and
green
6
light to this
launches
comeback.
of an intermediate range ballistic missile, all of which Pyongyang emphatically states will target the United States and Guam. Now, while some might dispute both the reliability and quantity of the North's strategic weapons, it is indisputable that KJU is rapidly closing the gap between rhetoric and capability. The Republic of Korea and Japan have been living under the shadow of the DPRK's threats for years.
Teva shares jump
And now
11%
that
after
shadow
Berkshire reports
looms over
$358
the
million
American
take.
PACOM and the entire DoD fully support the
Trump
President's
fires first
maximum
salvo on drug
security,
prices. Alex
or
Jones info
maximum
hours
pressure
there is a run
campaign,
for your
rather,
mind.
led by the State Department. Nobody seeks or desires conflict with North Korea, but the U.S. and our allies must prepare for the full range of contingency
Idling women in
responses.
jeopardy.
Meanwhile,
What comes
China
next?
is
Syria
leveraging
deeply.
military modernization influence operations, and predatory economics to coerce neighboring countries to reorder the Indo-Pacific to their advantage. While some view China's actions in the East and South China Seas as opportunistic, I do not. I view them as coordinated, methodical, and strategic, using their military and economic power to erode the free and open international order. China's aggression in the South China Sea
Bitcoin rises 9% to 10-day high above $9,000.
Despite the Permanent Court of Arbitration's tribunal ruling that invalidated China's 9-line claim on unprecedented land reclamation in 2016. And China is attempting to assert
the
de
shifting role of women in Syria's economy is Syria deeply.
Maritime features by further militarizing its man-made bases to this very day. China's impressive military buildup could soon challenge the United States across almost every domain. Key advancements include fielding significant improvements in missile systems, developing fifth-generation fighter aircraft capabilities, and growing the size and capability of the Chinese Navy to include their first overseas base in the port of Djibouti. They are also heavily investing in the next wave of military technologies, including hypersonic missiles, advanced space and cyber capabilities, and artificial intelligence. If the U.S. does not keep pace, PACOM will struggle to compete with the People's Liberation Army on future battlefields. China's ongoing military buildup, advancement, and modernization are core elements of their strategy to supplant the United States as a security partner of choice for countries in the Indo-Pacific. But China also holds clear global ambitions. But don't take my word for it. Just listen to what China itself says. At the 19th Party Congress, President Xi stated he wanted China to develop a world-class military and become a global leader in terms of composite national strength and international influence. Ladies and gentlemen, China's intent
fired 19 people
is
for
crystal
sexual
clear.
abuse in 2017 News DW 42.2018.
These types of aspirational goals could be appropriate for a nation of China's stature, but judging by China's regional behavior, I'm concerned that China will now work to undermine the rules-based international order, not just in the Indo-Pacific, but on the global scale, as China expands its presence in Central Asia, the Arctic,
Florida
Africa,
school
South
shooting
America,
survivor
and
speaks
Europe.
out there where
This
bullet holes
increasingly
everywhere.
complex environment necessitates continued dialogue between the U.S. and Chinese militaries to improve understanding and reduce risk. For PACOM, my goal remains to
Syrian
convince
doctor building
China
an
that
underground
its best
hospital for
future
women in
comes
Syria
from
deeply.
peaceful cooperation and meaningful participation in the current free and open international order and honoring its international commitments. After all, the Chinese economic miracle could not have happened
17 killed in shooting at high school in Parkland, Florida. Authorities say NBC News.
But I've also been loud and clear that we won't allow the shared domains to be closed down unilaterally. So we'll cooperate where we can, but remain ready to confront where we must. Now, Russia's operations and
sound alarm on
engagement
China
throughout the
threat Alex Jones
Indo-Pacific
info hours there
continue
so
to
we're on for your
rise,
mind.
both to advance their own strategic interests and to undermine U.S. interests. China intends to impose additional costs on the U.S. whenever and wherever possible by playing the role of a spoiler, especially with respect to the DPRK. Russia also sees economic opportunities
President of South
to not
Africa.
only build markets for their energy exports, but also to build, and in some cases rebuild, arms sales relationships in the region. Of particular note are Russian efforts to build presence and influence in the high north. Russia has more bases north of the Arctic Circle than all other countries combined, and is building more with distinctly military capabilities. In the PACOM region, one event dominated the counterterrorism fight in 2017, and that was a siege by ISIS in the Philippines and recapture by the government forces of the Philippines the Philippine city of Marawi. It was both symbolic of the
Intel
larger
Chief sound
struggle
alarm on China threat
against
Alex
violent
Jones info hours there
extremism,
so
and
on for
also
your
an
mind.
anomaly characterized by unique circumstances and opportunities. Marawi underscores two important themes with regard to defeating ISIS in the Indo-Pacific. First, localized threats can quickly transform into international causes. An early and effective response is vital to control the fight and own the narrative. Second, counterterrorism operations are extremely challenging, and most regional forces are poorly equipped for such fights. Our engagement strategy and
I'll keep looking. Wow, check out what's going on. Saakashvili. Georgian reformist battles Ukraine's President bar in depth bar DW bar 13.2.2018. Take a good look at what I just found. Wanted in his native Georgia, Mikhail Saakashvili is engaged in a fierce political battle with Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko. Saakashvili says he wants to rescue his adopted country from Kyiv's bandits. Former Georgian President Mikhail Saakashvili presents himself as an uncompromising reformer and crusader against corruption. Fluent in English and partly educated in the US, Saakashvili became a media darling by spearheading the bloodless ouster of Georgian President Eduard Shevardnadze, a former Soviet official in 2003. And the reforms that Saakashvili put in place during his own tenure as Georgia's leader also earned him a high praise. Nevertheless, Saakashvili's critics accuse him of grandstanding and perpetuating the very crimes that he claims to fight now 50. He is facing several charges in multiple countries and controversies have stacked up over the course of his turbulent political career. Saakashvili's high-profile conflict with Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko escalated on Monday, when a group of masked men in military uniforms seized him from a Kyiv restaurant and deported him to Poland. Saakashvili pledged to continue his crusade against Poroshenko, whom he accuses of corruption. Born in Tbilisi in December 1967, Saakashvili was still a student in Kyiv when the Soviet Union began its final dissolution in the early 1990s. During his studies, he became friends with Poroshenko. NSA shooting. 3 arrested, 3 injured after Savage crashes main gate. Found the juicy. Already a subscriber. Subscribe to USA Today. Already a print edition subscriber, but don't have a login. Manage your account settings. Get the news.
I got some dope on my mind. In the zone, I do not know what I'll find. There's nowhere to go and there's nowhere to hide. Just roll up a backward and that will suffice. Came for some action, I'm having a time. Came from the ashes and capitalized. Smoking the zone, I don't talk on the phone. Stick with the packet and that was advised. Be watching your tone when you talking the tone. See off of the snow and I'm off of the drone. Even when paper was awfully low, I I always knew I could do what I want. Law of attraction, it's always no accident. I'm on the acid, turn me to a pacifist. Go but get passionate, shit is abundant, there's no need to ration it, yeah.